Okay, everybody, it's 10:30 on 8th of January 2024. We are at Lincolnshire County Council. This is the Planning and Regulation Committee. For the sake of those people in the room, I know there's one or two people online. We've had the fire alarm already tested, so if you hear a fire alarm, please exit the building to the rear of me. Water available to the rear of the room. Coffee facilities today are limited in that the coffee machines I don't think are working too well in the building, but I'm not really going to record that in the minutes. Moving on rapidly, item 1 is apologies replacement members.
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Carrington, Councillor Hassan and Councillor Reid, although he is joining us virtually via Teams.
Thank you. So Councillor Reid may well participate, may speak, but won't be able to vote for this meeting, so but he is present. Item 2 is declarations of members' interest. Anybody wish to declare anything? Seeing nothing, I'll therefore move you on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. This was the 4th of December 2023, last year in fact. I'm quite happy to move them from the chair. They have been previously circulated. Councillor Skinner, you have your hand up. I presume you're seconding.
Very happy to second, sir.
Thank you. I will check that everyone's awake. All in favour, please show now. Yes, there's hands moving. Excellent. There's one or two that didn't. I presume it might be down to the fact they weren't here or whatever, but that is a clear majority, so I will sign those minutes. Item 4 is traffic items. 4.1 takes us to Scrub Hill C613, the proposed 40-mile-an-hour limit, and this goes to Jan Gibson, our officer for the morning. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you, Chairman. I'm Jan Gibson, the Programme Leader for Traffic. The next slide, please. So this first report considers a speed limit at Scrub Hill. Been asked by the Parish Council and local member to review all the speed limits on the 613. Next slide, please. At Scrub Hill, there's an existing 50-mile-an-hour limit, and the speed survey indicates that the mean speed is 46 miles per hour, which identifies it as a borderline case. The recommendation in the report, therefore, is that members consider a reduction to a 40-mile-an-hour limit at this location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can see from the report the recommendation. Councillor Ashton, I was going to talk to this one at length, but we have one or two members that know the area better than me. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is in my county division. Incredibly grateful to Jan and the team for the work that they're doing on the reviews on the C613. This is an incredibly busy route connecting through to Coningsby, bringing a lot of traffic off of the B1192. By its very nature, it's quite straight. Straight road going through small hamlets, which does lead at times to a feeling of a rat run, and is genuinely a concern to the local community, both in the hamlet here at Scrub Hill and the other hamlets along this route. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd be very keen to move that the committee does use its discretion and agree to this limit, please.
Councillor Ashley Morris, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there actually any evidence in the way of accident results or reports or anything else to show that this is necessary? Because we seem to do a huge amount of these tiddly little speed limits. I use that road much more often than Councillor Ashton, and I never see a problem. It is a straight road. There's a small amount of housing forming that village, and there's also Dog Dyke, which is in exactly the same position, slightly further on. But is there any real evidence, apart from why don't we have a speed limit, to show that we need one? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't believe that there have been any accidents on that stretch in the last 5 years. But the policy does allow us to reduce the limit. If there's an existing limit and we get a mean speed of 46 miles per hour, it does enable us to bring it to this committee so that they can either allow it to go ahead or not, but it is at the discretion of the committee.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm mindful of what the leader said to us last year, not too long ago, late last year. This reminds me very much of where I live myself, Chairman, and the speed limit started at 60, it then went to 40, it then went to 30, because it ends just before my property when it goes to 60. And Chairman, it's all very well and good lowering the speed limit, but as the leader said himself, if you don't bring the local population with you and the people around that area, it doesn't really do much. And as Councillor Ashley Morris has said, that is a straight piece of road. Now, the speed limit I refer to in my own, where I live, has been that way for a good year, 2 years, and nobody does 30 through there, Chairman, absolutely nobody. So we could reduce the speed limit today and it won't have the blindest bit of difference, because I suspect most people, as Councillor Morris has said, hasn't been an accident and Jan, the officer, has said there hasn't been accidents in 5 years due to speeding. So unless there is somebody enforcing that sat there, Chairman, I don't think it will do a lot of good. And I'm very mindful of what the leader has said, which is you must bring the local populace with you. Now, whether because of parish council support you are doing that, and say in the case of Fir Park in the A631 and the 46, you aren't, because again, that's another example, Chairman, where they've reduced the speed limit because the late Louis Strange campaigned very hard for that. I remember it very well. And whilst I understand his rationale, I can tell you categorically the locals do not do the speed limit, Chairman. So that's my one concern, Chairman, is if we lower this, is it going to have the impact that we want it to have as a committee? Or is it actually going to be abided by? Or is it window dressing, Chairman? It's there, but they're going to carry on doing the 60 speed limit because the locals know it's perfectly safe, theoretically, or the 50 speed limit to do it?
I'm going to come back and I'm going to second this application to approve these proposed limits. It's important that this has been assessed according to policy, and I'd like to thank the officers for taking the time and trouble of assessing it, and they've brought it to us because yes, it's an option for us, but the point is that as far as local people are concerned, unless you have the ability to enforce something, and you will never ever get any prosecutions there, and people will not abide to the speed limit. It gives the police the option to go there. So although we put the speed limit in place, it does come down to enforcement and the police taking action. Having said that, I've travelled over the years, and you know, you've heard me talk in terms of I know Lincolnshire quite well. I've travelled many roads across Lincolnshire. In my many years of driving, I dare say I've maybe only driven this road a couple of times in my life. But it's a population centre, and I can see the housing along the side of the roads, and I do believe it's our duty, now we've assessed it, to actually put that option there and place it into the hands of the police to enforce the limits. If the policy, the speed limit policy of Lincolnshire says that we should potentially put it in place, I think it's down to the committee to make that decision. Quite happy to second it. Any comments from Jan at all?
Thank you. Yeah, the mean speed is a sort of national guidance as to what the level of speed limit is. The difference in Lincolnshire is that normally it'd be 43 miles per hour would be the cut-off point for a 40 mile an hour limit. But we have introduced this borderline case option where members can overrule that if required.
Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of the comments you made, Chairman. This is one of my regular cycling routes, and I think it will make a difference to this area. Thank you.
Okay. Would anybody else like to comment? Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Yes, just for the reassurance of colleagues, this is genuinely important to the community that live here, the community that I'm privileged to represent. From the conversation, discussion with the parish council as well as local residents, this is a measure which they would wholeheartedly welcome. I think just to reassure Councillor Smith, we have the evidence that the mean speed at the moment is 46 miles an hour, which is comfortably below the existing speed limit. So I feel that there is a reasonable expectation that compliance with the limit that we're looking to put in place will be up there. And I can also reassure that the Road Safety Partnership camera vans are in operation at locations on the B1192, and I'm sure would welcome the opportunity to visit Scrub Hill should the opportunity arise in the future.
Jan, please.
It's just worth pointing out that if the level's reduced to 40, it does make that parish eligible for community speed watch options too.
Thank you for those comments. Okay, I see nobody else wishing to comment. Proposed by Councillor Ashton, seconded by myself, Councillor Fleetwood. All in favour, please show now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those against? 1. Okay, that is carried. So I'll therefore move to the next application, 4.2 Western Hills, Broadgate Junctions. Again, back to you, Jan, please.
Thank you. So the next report relates to proposed weighting restrictions at Western Hills on Broadgate at its junctions with St John's Road and Carrisbrook Way. Just waiting for the slide.
I think we might have a gremlin in the system after Christmas, who knows? We'll wait for this slide to load before we continue, just for the benefit of those people on the internet. I'm hoping it will load anyway. Okay, it will come in a moment, so don't worry. It's well worth waiting for, I'm sure. Allegedly, it takes 3 seconds for a message for a byte of memory to go from the UK to Australia. So I think so via the big World Wide Web. So I don't know quite. We've lost it somewhere, but it's coming back, I'm sure. There we are. We have a slide nearly coming up. And we're nearly ready to go.
Next slide, please.
You're just tempting fate now, asking next slide.
So Western Hills lies just to the east of Spalding. Next slide, please. The Parish Council has asked us to consider weighting restrictions at these 2 junctions off Broadgate. It's alleged that parking related to a nearby business is causing problems at these junctions in terms of visibility and access. We've had 2 objections to the proposals on the basis that this restrictions may lead to displacement of vehicles into the side roads and cause congestion there, and also a request for them to be extended further. Officers' views are that these are minimal restrictions which will have minimal impact on the surrounding area, and that we do not support further extension as the restrictions as proposed will achieve the aims of the schemes. The recommendation therefore is that the committee overrules the objections so that we can introduce the scheme. Thank you.
Councillor Pepper first.
Thank you, Chairman. I do know this location very well, being at the south of the county. I do believe the recommendation is the right one, and I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. I am more than happy to second this recommendation. As has been said, when applications like this come before us, Chairman, it is a very sad state of affairs in reality, because as we all know, when you are taught to drive, you are told you do not park within so many feet of junctions because it's actually a motoring offence, but it seems that seems to fall on deaf ears these days, Chairman. So not only is it a hindrance for ingress and egress, it's also actually very dangerous if you're trying to use the junction. So I'm more than happy to second it, Chairman.
Councillor Ashton?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Beat me to second this as usual. I'm very happy to be guided by the member with local knowledge in these circumstances. And a glance at Google Maps of this location would suggest that if there is a little bit of parking that ends up on Carisbrook Way and St John's Road, then there is plenty of room down there for that to take place without it being a genuine imposition on the local community.
Thank you. I don't believe there's anything for John to answer to there. So, and I don't see anybody else wishing to speak, so I'll put it to the meeting. Proposed Councillor Pepper, seconded Councillor Smith. All in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Nobody against, nobody extensions, therefore carried. Thank you. I'll move you to 4.3 then, which is Sleaford, Eastgate, Nashfield Road with the amendments to the waiting restrictions.
Thank you. So this last final report is for Sleaford, Eastgate and Ashfield Road, proposed amendments to waiting restrictions. Next slide, please. Eastgate is one of the main roads in and out of Sleaford, connecting the town centre with the A17 and the A153. Next slide, please. William Alvey School, located just at the top there off Eastgate, is a large primary, and it generates in the region of 40 to 50 vehicles parking on street daily at school start and finish times. Where these park on Eastgate, it creates problems in terms of obstruction for traffic flow, particularly large vehicles, and also parking on the south side, the vehicles pull onto the cycleway, footway and obstruct it, making it difficult and dangerous to use. So the aim of the scheme is to remove this parking on Eastgate. Next slide, please. So we're proposing to extend the single yellow line on the north side as shown in green, and to introduce no waiting at any time on the south side as shown in red. And we're taking the opportunity to protect the access into the blue light centre with further no waiting at any time restrictions. Previous slide, please. So, has it got that's it? So parents already utilise the existing limited waiting bay on Ashfield Road, shown in yellow. Our observations have indicated that the use of the permit parking bays on the west side of Ashfield Road is quite underutilised, particularly during the day. Our proposal, therefore, is that to make these bays dual purpose so that they can be used by permit holders for an unlimited period, but for 40 minutes by non-permit holders. This will cater for approximately half of the vehicles that will be displaced from Eastgate. We're also creating a similar new bay on the east side of Ashfield as shown in orange, where there is currently no restriction. We've had a number of objections, mainly from permit holders who have concerns that they will not be able to utilise the bays at any time as they currently do. And they also point out that there are alternative arrangements for parking in terms of car parking at Cogglesford Mill and Eastgate. We agree that there are alternative parking arrangements, and these there are 12 spaces in Cogglesford Mill and 172 in Eastgate, which are available to parents. But we do feel that having monitored the use of the existing permit bays, we could utilise the highway space here more efficiently by making them dual bays and allowing them to be used by non-permit holders for a short period of time. We anticipate, therefore, that I've already said that, sorry. The proposal, therefore, is that the recommendation, therefore, is that the objections are overruled so that we can introduce the scheme as advertised. Thank you.
I'm sure many people will be familiar with this site in that NKDC offices are on the opposite side of the road to here, and indeed County have over the years kept many offices in this location, so one or two people may have visited the site and be well aware of the parking, the situation on the opposite side of the road to this. I'm quite happy from the chair to move this recommendation. Sleaford is an interesting zone for parking, and I believe that we should basically just allow this to go through now we've assessed it, to take things forward. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Very happy to second it. I know this area. I worked actually in Sleaford for a period of 5 years. Know the Cogglesford Mill area and know what happens with the parking on a daily basis. So I think the officers have assessed this extremely well, and I'm very supportive. Happy to second.
Okay. Is there any other speakers? Councillor Mrs Overton.
Thank you. I think this is a difficult one, and I understand the pressures. I also know this area very well, particularly at school times, since I go swimming at the pool there in the mornings frequently. So I do know this road as well at school time, and I recognise the problem. What I'm really concerned about is whether we've provided sufficient alternative, because if the parents don't have anywhere to park, that's going to cause a problem too, because they will then end up parking illegally, no doubt, because they'll be desperate to get the children to school. The suggestions that you make about the alternatives, the two in Eastgate, and that is not nearby. They've got to make, I think they've got to make quite an effort to do that and plan for it, because it takes an extra 10 minutes walk, I should think. So they need to plan to park there, which they may not have done. So I think that I do see this as, I don't think this is going to be enough to resolve the problem. And I just would like to see some more alternative that could be provided, even if, and I know it's a lot to ask, but if part of that, where they do park at the moment on the verge, if some of that could be lay-by, that would actually help resolve the problem. So I think this is a bigger problem than this will solve. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Of course, that's a separate issue, and that's a highways issue. We are just dealing with the amendments to the weighting restrictions here. So we'll go from there. Councillor Ashley Morris.
Thanks, Mr Chairman. This is really just an observation, but I would have thought the people who've paid for parking permits will all of a sudden find, particularly in the morning when it's school dropping off time and before you've gone to work, that altering the bays isn't going to make a hell of a lot of difference. I appreciate the afternoon probably would be easier because people are perhaps working, gone out shopping, whatever. But I would have thought there's going to be a real pinch point around 8 o'clock-ish when everyone's still parked there because they haven't set off for work. And people are going to want to drop off for school. We budge school parking around so much. I deal with 2 or 3 schools in my division in Boston, and we've shoved parking here, eiffelled it along here. Then you have another huge amount of people that are upset because they've got parking outside their house again. So I think this perhaps needs another look, because several of the solutions don't seem to be solutions to me. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I must say I concur with Councillor Morris and Councillor Overton. If I was paying for a permit and that was my property, I would be quite upset and aggrieved myself. As you said, Councillor Morris, come an afternoon, you may need to use it, and you then find you can't. I also have a lot of sympathy with the objections when they say there is a nearby car park. Why can't it be used? Now, I don't know how full or frequent that car park is used. I do not know the area as well as others, Chairman. But I do think, as has been said, this will kick the can down the road for a while, and I think this issue will come back. And it's not an easy issue to fix, Chairman, because unfortunately a lot of our schools, how they are built, and I have one I've just asked Jan to look at in my patch actually, they simply do not have the land to accommodate the level of parking of parents that is now customary, because years gone by children lived closer to schools, they would walk or they would walk further, and that doesn't happen. So there is no easy solution, Chairman, but I did want to record my thoughts on the matter, and I think, as Councillor Morris, we do need to, whether it be through a working group, because it's probably not for this committee directly here to look at, but it is an issue that needs a more detailed look at than, shall I say, what is a piecemeal approach with each individual issue coming before us, because some of the issues they solve, and sometimes we kick the can down the road and it's back 6 months, Chairman, and I think, unfortunately, because of the nature of the area, I think this will unfortunately be the latter.
Well, that's probably one of the reasons why we have it at committee, for the committee to make a judgment. The officers have made their recommendation, and it's for the committee to decide which way it needs to go. I don't see any further speakers, but the application as printed has been proposed by myself and seconded by Councillor Skinner. I suggest this is not going to be a unanimous vote, so all in favour, please show now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? 3. So therefore it is carried as printed. Thank you very much. Okay, so that therefore concludes the traffic items. Thank you, Jan. We're going to have a very slight break at the moment, and I will say it's going to be a minute or so, so don't disappear down the corridor whilst we change officers and we move over to item 5. So, and at 5.1 we have the Commons Act 2006 application to register land as a town or village green. So I don't know who's going to present this one. Oh, over here. So I've got Richard Roots, is it?
Yes, that's right.
Excellent. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning. Okay, so the purpose of the report is to present to the committee the recommendations of an independent inspector further to an informal public inquiry held between the 8th of March and 2023 and Tuesday the 18th of April 2023, so that the committee can determine the application for land to the rear of Cherry Holt Road in Stamford, which I'll now refer to as the land, to be registered as a town or village green under Section 15 of the Commons Act. On the 28th of May 2019, an application was submitted by Councillor David Taylor, the applicant, to register the land as a town or village green. The application was accepted by Lincolnshire County Council, acting as the Commons Registration Authority, and advised in accordance with Regulation 5 of the Commons regulations. We advertised it, in accordance with the regulations. On the 4th of September 2019, an email was received informing LCC that a planning application had been made for the site. It was determined by ourselves and the District Council that no triggering event had taken place, so the Village Green application could continue. A letter objecting to the application was received dated the 11th of December 2019 by Womblebond Dickinson, acting on behalf of the objector, who was the landowner. A more extensive objection letter was then received on the 30th of January 2020, again by Womblebond Dickinson. As a result of there being objections to the application, an informal public inquiry was arranged to get an independent expert recommendation. This is the report submitted by Martin Edwards of Cornerstone Barristers, dated the 21st of September 2023. Under Section 15, subsection 1 of the 2006 Act, anyone may apply to a Commons registration authority to register the land as a town or village green. In order for the land to be registered as a town or village green, the applicant has to demonstrate on the balance of probabilities that a significant number of inhabitants of a locality or any neighbourhood within the locality have indulged as of right in lawful sport or pastime on the land for a period of at least 20 years, and that this use continued to the date of the application. It is necessary that all of these criteria are met before a registration authority can register the land as a town or village green. Therefore, if any one element is not satisfied, then the applicant must be rejected. Mr. Edwards considered all the written evidence submitted with the application and oral evidence presented at the public inquiry, and based his recommendation on whether the evidence indicates that the statutory criteria for registration have been met. Mr. Edwards recommended that the application should be rejected because the applicant has not shown on the balance of probability for the purpose of Section 15, subsection 2 of the Act, that the use of the land has been as of right and by a significant number of inhabitants. This in turn means that the applicant has failed to satisfy all the recommendations of the statutory tests, and the committee is recommended to accept Mr. Edwards' recommendations and reject the application to register the land rear of Cherry Hall, Stamford. Thank you.
Thank you for that concise, detailed introduction to the report. Obviously, the main report we have in front of us today is but a page and a half long, and the recommendation is to reject the application. You've said within your comments that Mr. Edwards has said that all items need to be satisfied and that they have not been. So on the basis of that, I am going to move that proposal, but I see Councillor Pepper indicating he wishes to speak.
It's just an observation, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if it's just me or is everyone else the same. I've not seen any pictures or diagrams or plans about this. And the report refers to access 1, 2, 3, it's compounds and exhibit this and that and what other. Clearly the inspector's seen plans and been to the site. The objectors, the applicant all know about it, but we've not seen sight of any plans, and I just find it, I feel quite strong about it actually. We're not seen a plan about it at all.
Whilst it'd be nice to see a plan, I think that the comments that have been made that we need to satisfy all situations, and Mr. Edwards the barrister has been through it and has said that all cases need to be satisfied, and it's clear that this is not the case. I think even without an illustration, it's a fairly clear-cut case. However, having said that, prior to the meeting, there was the option for individuals, should they have wished to, they've had the papers for a week, to have asked for plans, or indeed to have looked at Google Maps to assess the situation for themselves. So I don't think it's a deal breaker with regard to the fact that we don't have the paperwork from that side.
John, I do take your point, but I mean, the inspector and whatever's seen all these plans and things, we are the ones making the decision, and we've not seen them.
So I'm going to refer you back to the officers and see if there's any comment from the officers.
Yes, we've got the plans. When we had the public inquiry, the plans were huge. They were done on a big whiteboard. Currently, legal services have run up to this point, and then it was down to me to bring the case to the public inquiry. So if you wanted to see plans, I would have to go back to legal and get the plans from them and bring them forward.
So if you prefer, we can actually defer this application and bring it back another month with some plans. But I have seen Councillor Mrs Overton indicating and Councillor Smith, so I'll go to Mrs Overton first.
I would support that. I also feel a bit nonplussed without having some more information, and I would appreciate that too. Thank you.
So Councillor Smith next.
Thank you, Chairman. I sat and read the entire inspector's, shall I say, summations on this, and it is very clear, as the officer has alluded to, that there has been a failure to demonstrate 20 years uninterrupted use, as evidenced by the development that took place on approximately 7% of the land. Furthermore, there has been a failure to demonstrate between village green uses and public right-of-way use, adding the clear challenges issued by the former tenant farmers and the wider actions of the owner. It is clear that the land has been, by virtue, as the officer says, as right and not by right, which the cases in their objections made very clear. So on that basis, Chairman, on the basis of the report, I'm more than happy to second your recommendation that this is refused. They've had a 2-day inquiry over this that's very detailed, and I don't think seeing plans would make any difference to the outcome that the inspectors reached. So I'm more than happy to second your to go with the recommendation as printed.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton.
Yeah, entirely in agreement with Councillor Smith on this one. Similarly, I took the time to read quite carefully through this report, appreciating this is an unusual item for us to have at this committee. And having read through that report, I'm incredibly grateful that effectively we have got expert advice on this rather than effectively trying to do that job ourselves. And I am satisfied, as indeed the report makes very clear, its author was equally satisfied that the case has not been made in this instance sufficient to grant the application. I would feel that we would be on incredibly dangerous ground if we were to reject that advice as clear as it is being set out and explained and given and evidenced. And I cannot for the life of me see what looking at a map is going to tell me what further than what I've already read. So, like Councillor Smith, I am happy to support your recommendation, Mr. Chairman, in refusing the application today.
Thank you. I don't see the officers indicating. I don't see anybody else wishing to question. Oh, Councillor Pepper. Oh, sorry. Welcome.
Sorry to labour the point, Chairman, but just to make it clear, I have read the whole report, digested it, but I just found it difficult with no diagrams to refer to. And in that case, I'll have to abstain. Thank you.
I'll take Councillor Reid online next, please. Microphone, please. You're still on mute, I'm afraid.
Can you hear me now?
We've got you.
This is an area that I'm very familiar with, Chairman and members. I have been involved in the planning permissions that have been sought in the past. It's a very emotive area. It's an area of ground that is overshadowed by the priory that sits at the far end. I would agree with the recommendation. I think beyond the application, there would be the cost of maintenance that would be due to it. And of course, this piece of land does go down to the River Welland at the bottom as well, which has been part of the emotive issues. It's two sides of it have residential dwellings currently around it, and I can understand where the quest comes from, but I would support, obviously I'm not able to vote, but with local knowledge I would support that's been said in debate and actually reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you for your local knowledge, Councillor Reid. And last but not least, and sorry, Vice Chairman, I have skipped over you a couple of times, but the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Chairman. So really, like Councillor Reid, I too have some local knowledge living sort of down in that sort of area of Lincolnshire. I think we can't get away from the fact that the inspector has obviously come up with the conclusion that the application should be rejected. I personally don't feel, although I know the area, that it makes a difference having the plans or not. I've read the full 60-page document. I've also read the addendum that we got sort of later last week, and I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation, and thank you for your report.
Okay, so I don't see anybody wishing to comment from the room. I don't see any officers wishing to make any further comment. The proposal as written, printed has been proposed by myself and seconded by Councillor Smith, if I remember correctly. So I will put it to the vote that the report as printed is accepted. All in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Are those against? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Thank you. That is therefore carried. So that therefore deals with this item, and I'd like to thank you all for participating in the meeting. However, don't run away, because I believe we have another little taster for you in a couple of minutes. So I think we'll have a quick 5-minute break, and I do mean a 5-minute break, and then we'll move on to the next item.